Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something you specifically requested. Spiritual capacity.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. You sent in this talk by Michelle Craig from back in 2019, given at the General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
It was directed at young women, but honestly, it feels like it could apply to just about anyone, anywhere, at any age.
Right.
So strap in. We're going deep on this one. Ready?
I'm ready.
Right.
Well, what's fascinating to me is how she defines spiritual capacity right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about being good, or like knowing a bunch of scriptures.
Right.
It's about something way more active, the ability to actually receive divine guidance, that personal connection with God, and then actually put it into action. It's about becoming more aligned with His will, which is a powerful concept when you really think about it.
I like that, yeah. She uses this analogy of spiritual capacity being like a muscle, which I thought was a really helpful way to think about it.
Oh, I like that. Like, we all know we have to exercise to get physically stronger, but what are we actually doing to strengthen our spirits?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it's something we often overlook, I think.
Totally.
Think about it. We spend so much time and energy developing talents, careers, relationships. But what about our ability to connect with something bigger than ourselves? To tap into that source of wisdom and guidance that can help us navigate all the complexities of life.
Absolutely. And she doesn't shy away from the why this all matters either. I mean, who hasn't felt lost or unsure at some point, like what decision to make or what path to take? If we could actually get divine guidance on that stuff, that'd be a total game changer.
For sure. And that's exactly what Craig's saying. Increasing our spiritual capacity isn't just some like abstract religious concept.
Yeah.
It has really real implications for our lives.
Yeah.
It empowers us to make better choices, to find more meaning in our experiences, to face challenges with greater confidence and resilience. I love that. Okay, so how do we actually do that? Build this capacity. Well, she lays out 4 steps. The first one is about creating time and space, which she compares to, get this, Wi-Fi.
I love that analogy.
It's so good.
Right, because it is so relatable in our like constantly connected world. We're so obsessed with having a strong Wi-Fi signal. But how often do we prioritize our connection to heaven? What are we actually doing to create the space for that signal to come through?
Such a good point. And she's not saying we have to become hermits or anything like that.
Right.
It's more about being intentional with our time and attention.
But being intentional in this world of constant distractions, that's the challenge, isn't it?
Oh, for sure.
What noise is crowding out that quiet time for you? It might be actual noise,
Yeah.
but it could also be that endless stream of thoughts, worries, that never-ending mental to-do list. So much of building spiritual capacity comes down to consciously choosing to create that space, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Totally agree. Then she jumps into the second step, act without delay. And this is where it gets personal for me.
Oh, you've got a story.
I do. It's not some epic tale or anything, but it really drove home the point. Okay, so I had this feeling that I should reach out to a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. But life got in the way. You know how it is. I got busy and put it off. And later I found out she was going through a really hard time and had wished she had someone to talk to. Talk about a gut punch. I just felt awful that I'd ignored that nudge.
Oh, no.
And it wasn't good. But, it really illustrates how this principle works, though. It's not always about some grand, life-altering action.
Right.
It's about those seemingly small promptings we get and being willing to act on them, even if we don't totally understand why.
It's almost like she's saying action builds trust,
It's like learning a new language, right?
Yes.
The more you use it, the more fluent you become. You start to recognize the patterns, the nuances.
Exactly. And that fluency in the language of the spirit, that's what allows us to receive more complex and nuanced communication from God. It's like tuning a radio dial to pick up a faint signal. The more you practice, the clearer that signal becomes.
Love it. Okay, on to step 3. This is where things get really interesting. Get your errand from the Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Craig shares this incredible story about her grandfather,
Fritz.
who would climb up on rooftops to literally minister to people.
Right.
Now, that's commitment.
Right. But I think what resonates so much about that story is that it smashes the misconception that we have to do something big or extraordinary to be of service.
Yeah.
Because everyone has unique skills and talents that God can use to help others, even if they seem small or insignificant to us.
Doesn't have to be some dramatic, world-changing thing, right?
Okay.
It could be as simple as listening to a friend, offering a kind word, sharing a talent.
Right, anything that brings light or love into the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's so key here is that Craig connects this idea of errands directly to receiving revelation.
Mm.
It all starts with that simple question, who can I help? Asking that question opens us up to divine guidance. It shifts our focus outward. It aligns us with God's purposes and allows us to become instruments in his hands, which is a pretty awesome thought if you really think about it.
It is a really cool way to look at it. So first 3 steps: creating space, acting on promptings, and seeking ways to serve. Makes sense so far. Then we get to the final step, and it's all about belief and trust. Craig uses this really cool example of different ways to cross water.
Ah, yes. Nephi builds a ship. The brother of Jared creates these intricate barges. And Moses, well, he just walks on dry land.
Just walks.
It's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
It's such a cool way to illustrate the idea that God's guidance is tailored to each individual. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to spiritual growth.
So even if someone else's spiritual journey looks completely different from yours, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
Right.
What matters is that you're seeking God's will for your life and trusting that he's leading you along the path that's best for you.
Exactly. And I think this ties into one of the biggest challenges we face today in our hyper-connected world: comparison.
Oh, yeah?
We see others seemingly getting like bigger or more dramatic answers to their prayers, and we start to doubt our own connection to God. Craig's message is so powerful here. Trust that God is leading you on a path specifically designed for you, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's.
I love that, yeah. And sometimes that path might take you in directions you never expected.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who would have thought Grandpa Fritz's ministry would involve fixing someone's roof on a Sunday?
Right. It's such a great reminder to be open to unexpected guidance, because if we're too focused on how we think things should be, we might miss the unique opportunities God has prepared for us.
Totally. Okay, we've covered a lot here. We've explored what spiritual capacity is, why it matters, and even got a sneak peek at those 4 steps. But there's so much more to unpack.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So get ready, everyone. We're just getting started.
I'm excited to dive deeper into this.
Oh, yeah, I'm hooked, and I bet you are too out there listening. Stay with us as we uncover more fascinating insights into this whole idea of spiritual capacity. No breaks here. We're diving straight into the good stuff.
That's right. No time to waste. Let's keep this deep dive going.
Oh.
All right, so we've been unpacking this idea of spiritual capacity. What's standing out to you so far?
Well, it's definitely gotten me thinking about my own life and how easily I can get caught up in the day-to-day and kind of lose sight of those deeper connections.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've been talking about spiritual capacity as this ability to tune into divine guidance, right?
Right.
And then actually put it into action.
Right.
But honestly, sometimes it feels like my signal is pretty weak.
Yeah. That's such a common experience, though, especially in our hyper-connected worlds.
Yeah.
Like, we're just bombarded with so much information and stimulation. It's so easy to get overwhelmed and lose that sense of stillness and inner peace. It's like our spiritual Wi-Fi is constantly, like, dropping out.
Okay, but how do we fix that? Like, do we all need to go live in a cave and meditate for hours a day to boost our signal? Because I'm not sure my schedule or my family would go for that.
That's a great point. It's not about retreating from the world or trying to become some kind of, spiritual superhero.
Right.
It's really about making small, consistent choices that create space for those deeper connections to emerge.
So less cave dwelling, more intentional living.
Exactly. Think about it like training a muscle. You wouldn't expect to, run a marathon without putting in the work, right? Same with our spiritual capacity. It takes effort, it takes discipline, and yeah, it takes a bit of faith to trust the process.
And just like any workout routine, there are different exercises we can do to strengthen those spiritual muscles, right?
Absolutely. And those 4 steps that Michelle Craig lays out, those are like our spiritual training plan.
Okay, I like that.
Remember, create time and space, act without delay, get your errand from the Lord, and believe and trust.
All right, so step 1 is all about creating that space. What are some practical things we can do even if we're super busy?
Well, it starts with identifying the noise in your life.
Okay.
What's crowding out that quiet time for you?
Yeah.
And it might be actual noise, the TV, the phone, the constant barrage of notifications.
Oh, yeah.
But it could also be mental clutter. The endless to-do lists, the worries, the negative self-talk that keeps us spinning in circles.
Yeah, it's like we're so busy doing that we forget to just be.
Exactly. So step 1 is about reclaiming some of that being time.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be a huge chunk of time. Even 5 or 10 minutes of quiet reflection can make a huge difference. Find a quiet spot, Put away the phone and just breathe.
Hmm.
Allow yourself to be present in the moment without judgment or expectation.
And that's where practices like meditation or prayer can be really helpful, right? They kind of help us quiet the mind and create that space for deeper connection.
Absolutely. Think of it like this. Meditation helps us to clear the channel, and prayer allows us to, tune into the right frequency. It's about opening ourselves up to receive those subtle whispers of guidance that are always there, but we often miss them because we're just too distracted.
Okay, so once we've created some space and, cleared the channel, so to speak, what's next? How do we start to recognize those whispers and actually act on them?
Well, that's where step 2 comes in. Act without delay.
Okay.
And this is where the rubber meets the road.
Oh.
It's not enough to just have good intentions or fleeting moments of inspiration. We have to be willing to actually put those inspirations into action, even if we don't fully understand why or where they might lead.
See, this is where I struggle sometimes. I get these nudges like I should call a friend or reach out to someone who's struggling or even just do something kind for a stranger. But then I overthink it, and I talk myself out of it. I tell myself I'm too busy or it won't matter anyway.
Yeah, that's the ego talking. It's that voice of fear and doubt that wants to keep us, small and safe. But here's the thing. Every time we ignore those promptings, we're essentially telling God, thanks for the guidance, but I've got this.
Oh, wow.
And in doing so, we miss out on incredible opportunities for growth and connection.
Okay, so how do we overcome that? How do we learn to trust those promptings and act on them, even when they feel scary or inconvenient?
It's a process, and it starts with recognizing that those promptings are not random.
Okay.
They're not just like thoughts popping into our heads.
Right.
They're messages from a loving source guiding us toward our highest good.
Okay, but how do we know the difference between our own thoughts and those divine nudges? How do we tell the difference between our ego and the Holy Spirit?
Ah, the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer, but here are a couple things to consider.
Okay.
First, pay attention to how those promptings feel. Do they bring a sense of peace, joy, or expansion? Or do they feel constricted, fearful, or self-serving?
So it's about tuning into the feeling, the energy behind the thought.
Exactly. Our intuition is a powerful tool, but we have to learn to listen to it. And secondly, ask yourself, is this prompting leading me toward love or fear?
Because love is always the answer, right? At least that's what all the inspirational quotes tell me.
Well, it's definitely a good guiding principle. Love is the ultimate expression of the divine. It's the force that connects us all, that heals and transforms. So if a prompting is leading you towards greater love, compassion, or service, that's a pretty good indicator you're on the right track.
Okay, so let's say we're doing the work. We're creating space, we're paying attention to those promptings, and we're even starting to act on them, even if it feels a little awkward at first. What's next on our spiritual training plan?
Well, that brings us to step 3. Get your errand from the Lord. This is where things get really exciting. It's about moving beyond our own limited perspective and asking, how can I be of service? Who needs my unique gifts and talents?
I love that. It shifts the focus from what do I want to what does God want me to do? It's about surrendering to a higher purpose.
And it's not about waiting for some, grand, life-altering mission to fall into our lap.
Right.
It's about recognizing the opportunities for service that are all around us every day. It might be as simple as offering a kind word to a stranger, listening to a friend who's struggling, or using our talents to make the world a more beautiful place.
And what's amazing is that when we start asking, who can I help? We open ourselves up to receiving even more guidance and inspiration.
Yeah.
It's like we're tuning into a different frequency, one that's aligned with our highest purpose.
Exactly. It's about aligning our will with God's will. And when we do that, amazing things can happen. We become conduits for His love and power, and we discover that our lives have a deeper meaning and purpose than we ever imagined.
Okay, so we've got space, action, service. That's 3 out of 4 spiritual steps. What's the final piece of this puzzle?
Step 4 is all about belief and trust. It's about cultivating faith in God's plan even when we don't understand it. It's about trusting that He knows us better than we know ourselves, and that He's guiding us along the path that's best for our eternal growth.
This is where I sometimes get tripped up, It's easy to trust when things are going well, but what about when things are tough? When we're facing challenges or setbacks or even just plain old boredom? How do we hold on to that trust when it feels like we're walking through the dark?
That's a great question, and it's something we all struggle with at times. The key is to remember that God is not some distant being, like sitting up in the clouds, judging our every move.
Right.
He's a loving parent, and he wants what's best for us. He wants us to grow, to learn, and to become the best versions of ourselves.
So even the tough times, the challenges, those are all part of the plan. They're not punishments. They're opportunities for growth.
Exactly. Think about it like this. A diamond is formed under intense pressure. It's the challenges, the heat, the friction that transform a lump of coal into something beautiful and valuable.
Okay, I love that analogy. So even when we don't understand what's happening, we can trust that there's a purpose to it all. We can trust that God is working through our experiences to shape us into something more beautiful and resilient than we could ever imagine on our own.
And that's where the real magic happens. When we surrender our fears, our doubts, our need to control everything, we open ourselves up to a whole new level of possibility.
Wow.
We tap into a source of strength and wisdom that's far greater than our own limited understanding.
So it's less about figuring it all out, more about letting go and trusting the journey.
Beautifully said. It's about surrendering to the flow of life, trusting that we're being guided and supported every step of the way.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the why and the how of building spiritual capacity, but I think there's one more piece to this puzzle.
Yeah.
What's the ultimate goal? Where does all this effort lead? What's the payoff for all this spiritual training?
Now that's the question that has been pondered by, philosophers and theologians for centuries.
Yeah.
But if we look at it through the lens of Michelle Craig's talk, I think the answer is beautifully simple.
Mhm.
It's about becoming more like our heavenly parents. They possess infinite love, wisdom, and power, and we, as their children, are endowed with the potential to develop those same qualities within ourselves.
Wow, that's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So it's not just about getting our prayers answered or feeling a little more peaceful. It's about a fundamental transformation of our very being.
Precisely. It's about expanding our understanding of who we are, where we came from, and what we're capable of becoming. It's about recognizing our divine heritage and striving to live in accordance with that truth.
So it's not about achieving some kind of checklist of spiritual accomplishments, but about embarking on a lifelong journey of growth and transformation.
Yes.
A journey that leads us toward greater love, peace, and joy, both in this life and in the eternities to come.
Absolutely. And what's even more fascinating is that this journey is not a solitary one. We're all in this together, supporting and encouraging each other along the way.
I love that. It's like we're all part of this grand cosmic tapestry, each thread unique and beautiful, woven together by a loving creator.
What a beautiful image. And it's a powerful reminder that we're not alone in this journey. We have each other, we have the divine, and we have an unlimited capacity for growth and transformation.
Okay, wow. I think we need a moment to let all of that sink in. And for you out there listening, what's resonating with you? What insights are bubbling up for you as we explore this idea of spiritual capacity?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment and share what's standing out to you from this deep dive so far.
And while you're pondering that, I'm curious.
Oh,
Right.
what's piqued your curiosity now?
Well, we've talked a lot about the individual journey of developing spiritual capacity, but I'm wondering about the collective impact.
Okay.
Like, what happens when a critical mass of people starts to tap into this power? Could it actually change the world?
Now that's a fascinating question and one that's worth exploring. Stay tuned as we dive deeper into this idea of collective spiritual awakening and the potential it holds for creating a more loving, just, and compassionate world.
So, thinking about spiritual capacity, not just as this like personal thing, but something that could ripple outward and actually impact the world. Pretty powerful stuff.
It is a profound concept, isn't it? The idea that our individual growth, our efforts to connect with the divine, could actually contribute to a larger shift in consciousness, like a collective awakening.
Yeah. Imagine a world where more people are operating from a place of love, compassion, and service, where we're not so focused on just our own little bubbles, but instead we're actively seeking ways to make a difference in the lives of others.
What a beautiful vision. And honestly, it's not as far-fetched as it might seem. Think about the power of, like, a single candle in a dark room. It might seem small, insignificant even, but it has the power to illuminate the entire space.
So each of us is like a little candle. And as we cultivate our own inner light, that light spreads outwards, illuminating the world around us.
Exactly. And as more and more candles are lit, the darkness begins to recede. It's the principle of synergy at work. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts.
I love that. But how do we actually do that? How do we move beyond individual growth and start to create that collective shift?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that we're not isolated beings. We're all interconnected, part of a vast web of relationships. Our thoughts, our actions, our very energy has an impact on the people around us, whether we realize it or not.
So it's like that butterfly effect thing, where a small change in one part of the system can have a ripple effect throughout the whole web.
Precisely. So every act of kindness, every moment of compassion, every time we choose love over fear, we're sending out positive ripples that can have a transformative impact.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. It means we're not just responsible for our own growth, but we actually have a responsibility to contribute to the collective good.
And it's not about becoming some kind of savior or trying to fix everyone else. It's about focusing on our own transformation, on becoming the best versions of ourselves, and trusting that as we do so, we naturally inspire and uplift others.
So like that Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. It's about embodying the qualities we want to see more of in the world. Love, compassion, forgiveness, generosity, kindness.
But how do we do that when the world often feels so, well, unloving and unkind and unforgiving? How do we stay positive and hopeful when we're surrounded by so much negativity and division?
That's where the trust piece comes in. Remember that fourth step Michelle Craig talked about? Believe and trust.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating faith in a power greater than ourselves, in a loving universe that's always working for our good, even when we can't see it.
It's about remembering that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Beautifully said. And it's about choosing to be that light, to be that love, even when it's hard, even when we feel surrounded by darkness.
So what does that look like, practically speaking? Are we talking about like grand gestures of altruism, saving the whales, ending world hunger?
It can be those things, for sure, but it doesn't have to be. Sometimes the most powerful acts of service are the simplest. A kind word to a stranger, a listening ear to a friend, a moment of presence with a loved one. It's about recognizing the opportunities for connection and compassion that are all around us every day.
It's about bringing that intentionality and that awareness of our spiritual capacity into every interaction, every moment.
And it's about recognizing the divinity in everyone we meet. Remember, we're all part of that same web of life, all connected to that same source of love and light.
I love that. So it's not about trying to convert everyone to our way of thinking or believing. It's about seeing that spark of the divine in everyone, regardless of their beliefs or background.
Exactly. It's about honoring the diversity of human experience while also recognizing our shared humanity. It's about building bridges instead of walls, about fostering understanding instead of judgment.
So this idea of collective spiritual capacity, it's not about some utopian fantasy where everyone's singing Kumbaya and holding hands. It's about creating a world where we're more conscious, more connected, and more compassionate.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and taking responsibility for our part in creating a more loving and just world.
And it all starts with that inner work, with cultivating our own spiritual capacity. Because as we grow, as we connect with the divine, that light naturally radiates outward, transforming not only our own lives, but the world around us.
What a powerful message, and one that gives me so much hope for the future. If enough of us commit to this journey of spiritual growth and service, imagine the possibilities. Imagine the world we could create together.
I'm feeling super inspired right now, and I hope you are too, out there listening.
As we wrap up this deep dive into spiritual capacity, remember, it's not a destination, it's a journey. A journey of growth, transformation, and service. A journey that can lead us toward greater love, joy, and fulfillment, both individually and collectively.
So keep seeking, keep growing, and keep diving deep. Thanks for joining us on this incredible adventure. Until next time, keep shining your light.